this weekend, another clash of styles. We have my guy, Kyung Hon Kang, taking on Danaa Storm Bakary. And this is an interesting fight because for Danaa, he's coming in on short notice. He is replacing Simon Oliveira in this fight. And I'm going to start the video off this way because, listen, snake oil or not, people are going to sell you a lot of different things on this fight from either fighter, and rightfully so. But I have to say this, and I can't stress it enough. Bakary Danaa got knocked out a month and a half ago by Chris Gutierrez, and he's taking this fight on short notice. He's been over training at Tiger Muay Thai for the last month, which is interesting because he's a longtime Jackson Wink guy, but getting acclimatized to the climate, I guess, so to speak, in Thailand, getting ready to fight in Singapore. But I do look at it for Bakary Danaa, and I go back and look at his last fight. He was riding a wave of success. Now, he was a slight favorite against Chris Gutierrez, and he was fighting that fight like a guy who knocked out his last two opponents very, very quickly. And if I even go back to the third to last fight, he knocked out Guido Canetti very quickly, too. So 3 big-time knockouts. You turn into Tony Gravely at 135, and you're knocking fools dead, and you fall in love with your hands. But the trouble for Bakary Danaa in his last fight, he was reaching for every punch, and he was throwing every ounce of his body into every shot against Chris Gutierrez. Gutierrez in the second round went, okay, I've been moving around way too much so far. I'm just going to move like Mravdashvili just once. Just one time spinning back fist. We'll see what happens. Knocked him down to the ground, and then he turned into Brock Lesnar and hammer-fisted him out of existence. So, again, I'm very surprised that anybody's letting Bakary Danaa get back into a fight this soon because it was March 26th when he got knocked out, and he's fighting in early June. I find that very surprising.
It is very surprising because normally, okay, think about it this way. If somebody gets knocked out, you normally say, hey, don't take any hits to the head for at least 2 months or a month. Then you can get back into the gym. Then we'll talk about a training
And this
camp.
motherfucker went, I want to hard spar Tiger fucking Muay Thai and fight Kyung Hon Kang, who's knocked guys down multiple times in the UFC.
Not like Tiger Muay Thai is known for their hard training sessions or anything. No, they are. They basically fight like 4 times a week, and it's very intense. So I am a little concerned about what version of Bakary Danaa we do get in this fight, because I will say this. I do think the best version of Bakary is probably better than the best version of Kyung Hon Kang that we've seen in the UFC up until this point, because he does have exceptional punching power with his hands. He's not somebody who throws really enough kicks, for being honest, and I do think that speaks to what you were saying before, how he does sometimes have to reach for his punches, because he doesn't really have any range finder other than his jab, and he's not really a jab heavy fighter either. He's gonna jump in with a left hook, try to follow it up with a right hook. He's really looking for his power shots more than anything to accumulate some kind of damage on the outside. But the thing about Danaa is, when it looks good, it looks great. And I do think that if he can get off to early success against Kyung Hon Kang, he could just continue to build. It's sort of that downhill like Giannis in transition. There's not much you can do once he gets that first step, because once Bakary does get your timing, he is able to land those power shots, and he is one of the more heavy-handed bantamweights out there. But I am really worried. Like, what kind of a training camp do you get in only, 5 weeks, basically? Especially coming off a very severe knockout. And there's different kinds of knockouts. There's, like, Jairzinho Rosenstrike last weekend, where it's like, okay, the stoppage was fine if you want to, but it's not like he was out cold or anything. You're not really worried about him long term.
And neither was Bakary. Like, he got right back up.
Exactly, but it was still, worrying, and I do worry about him taking this fight on such short notice. But the thing about Kyung Hon Kang is, he will strike enough, but I do expect him to look for more of a grappling-heavy approach in this fight, because if he does find himself in one of those, hey, a strike-for-strike kind of fights, I don't care if Bakary got knocked out last week, or even if he did get knocked out last week, I would still favor him in that kind of a fight, because I do think he is much more heavy-handed than Mr. Perfect, but I do think Kyung Hon Kang is the much more well-rounded fighter, and he is able to strike his way into the clinch effectively, I do think that there will be opportunities for him to go for takedowns, but I think the first 4 minutes, first 5 minutes, even bleeding into the second round a little bit, is getting really dangerous for Kyung Hon Kang, because he himself is hittable on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, for Kyung Hon Kang, you talk about it like he's definitely more of a long-range weapon type of guy. And again, this is one of those fights where he's a little bit taller, he has a little bit more in terms of reach. Some fighters don't use it. We talk about it here all the time. Some guys are long and lanky, but they try to work in boxing range, and then they end up losing. Look at James Vick at the end of his career. That's kind of what amounted to his downfall. But for Kang, he does understand it. Now, I look at some of his fights. The fight against Teruto Ishihara, he gets dropped early, but then he drops Teruto and he ends up getting the finish. Brandon Davis drops him. The fight against Ronnie Yaya, beats the brakes off him in the first round, drops him, and then in the second round, he gets controlled for 4 minutes and 48 seconds. In the third round, he gets controlled for 4 minutes and 24 seconds because Ronnie Yaya is just like a renaissance man at 135. Like, I absolutely love to watch him work, but he was able to beat Kyung Hon Kang at the game where Young is definitely more than competent on the ground. I mean, both these guys have fought Guido Canetti. One guy knocked him out, and one guy just turned into used Guido's nickname against him, turned into a ninja, did Kyung Hon Kang in that fight. He went sicko mode. But I do look at this fight as Gong's last fight out, he lost. He got just absolutely worn down in the second and the third rounds. I'm eager to see what he looks like in this one because, again, you see him in the picture here with the long hair. He had even longer hair on his Instagram.
Looking like me.
But then he cut it right back up. So, Kyung Hon Kang, Mr. Perfect. It's going to be really interesting to see what we get. The odds in this fight at open, Gong at a plus 130, Batgerel Danaa minus 150. We have a look at the topology votes. Surprise to us there to you. I'm going to say over under, Matt, 70% Batgerel Danaa.
I think it'll be over.
You think it's going to be over? It is over. 734 total votes. 77 Danaa. 72% by knockout. For the 23% that have Kyung Hon Kang, 70% by decision. I think Kyung Hon Kang beats Batgerel Danaa coming up this weekend. And it's the short notice nature. It's the fact that Batgerel Danaa got finished not that long ago. And it's the fact that Batgerel Danaa, again, I've seen people out there on the Underground Whisper Network talking about this fight saying, well, Kyung Hon Kang, only a one-round guy. Well, his last fight out, yeah, he got taken down over and over, second round, third round. Old man Yaya's got a high motor that keeps it going, and he's a totally different fighter than Batgerel Danaa. I think Kang is better on the ground, better with his wrestling, long-range weapons, as long as he doesn't get caught, and that's a tough ask. But I do think he gets a win coming up this weekend over Danaa, which is very unpopular because a lot of people love the man out of Mongolia.
And I completely understand it. If it wasn't for the short notice nature of this fight, I would favor Danaa Batgerel in this fight, without a doubt, to be honest. I think he's the much better striker. Even though Kang can strike from the outside, I don't think it's a sustainable enough game plan for him to be able to stay away from the power punching of Batgerel for 15 minutes, and I would expect Danaa to get on the inside at some point, land some power shots, and potentially even put him down during the fight. But I do agree with you. The fact that Batgerel got knocked out not that long ago, and the fact that Khan is the more well-rounded fighter, if he's not having success on the feet, he's going to be able to be the one to decide, hey, I can take it to the mat. But the weird thing about Kang is, we talk about this sometimes, so there's some fighters who are really good with offensive leg kicks, but they don't really check them defensively. Kang's like that with his own grappling. He is a good offensive grappler, but sometimes he can get behind if he is fighting another fighter who is very grappling heavy. So I will be interested to see if he does have a lot of success in the first round. Does he burn himself out a little bit too much so that Danaa Batgerel can get his way back in as the fight goes on? I'm going to go with Mr. Perfect, but this should be a fun fight.
Both of us going with the underdog out of Busan, Mr. Perfect, Kyung Hon Kang. Matt, I can hear the boo birds out there. They're on the airplanes. They're in their own cars listening to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. They're giving us the gears, but we're going with Mr. Perfect. Let us know down below in the comments section who you have in this matchup. We got a lot bigger and better fights coming up, including the 2 title fights up near the top. So you're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.